I'm going to regret this.
Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Hello and welcome to Aggressive Negotiations, that wonderful little slice of Star Wars heaven. And I am just one of your hosts, Matthew Rushing, and with me, as he is every single week, the one and only illustrious Jedi Master, John Mills.
And I want to announce a special promotion here on Aggressive Negotiations that we are offering 33% off of a stay in the exclusive Royce Hemlock Suite here in Mount Tantus Broadcast Headquarters, where you can stay in a suite tended to by none other than Dr. Royce Hemlock, where he will ensure that every bit of information and every aspect of your stay is perfect. He will make sure that everything that you could possibly think would happen in the Dr. Hemlock Suite will happen. So that's 33% off, limited time here through Aggressive Negotiations.
Oh, that's terrifying.
I know, isn't it? But think of the possibilities, right? Look, the Star Wars hotel flopped. Let's make a Mount Tantus hotel at least, right? I'm curious. Ooh. Disney could do their own Halloween Horror Nights, but at Galaxy's Edge, and they could have a Dr. Hemlock section. Boom, there you go. Money making. We keep throwing these money making ideas out at Disney, and they never listen. I don't get it. Are they still listening to the show? I don't know.
I don't think they are, unfortunately. I think they've stopped listening, mainly because they just feel bad about the fact that we keep giving these incredible ideas to them and then they don't use them. Right. And then they realize their mistake. And so I think that's really what it is. Yeah, it is completely embarrassing. But for all of you that are listening, we really appreciate it. Please make sure that you follow us and like us and subscribe wherever you're getting your podcasts. Of course, you can also find us on the X Twitter at the Jedi Masters. You can also find us at the Nerd Party. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/the Nerd Party. You can find us at the Nerd Party on Instagram. But John, we have reached a tipping point, and this episode really is not only setting up where we're going to go by the end of this season, but it's also setting up everything that we're going to be looking at for season 3. Especially with this beginning here of connecting the other clones that have created this resistance and what's going on with them, the clones that Echo has joined. And I found this an incredibly fascinating and a really interesting beginning to the episode where we just dive right in, saving these clones who are being shipped somewhere. And we also find out later on in the episode, they're clones who have begun to question their orders and therefore are being shipped off. And I find this to be really fascinating. And again, it just continues to add layers to the story. And it's an incredibly fun opening. We have this heist of this ship with these clones that we know, like Gregor and others, Echo and the like. And man, what a great opening!
It's beyond great. I'm going to slow it down here just to specifically heap praise on the animation of this section. It's naturally the editing, the camera angle choices, all of that are great. But when you see that cruiser in the beginning do that pass as it's leaving the planet, it's a stunning shot. And there are so many stunning shots in this episode, but especially these space shots are phenomenal. It's such a reminder of how far everything has come. And then additionally, with the way that everything is laid out and edited on this heist, not only do we have our clear sense of space and where are we in relation to everything, but so much of the cutting and the ship movements reminded me so much of Clone Wars battle sequences that we got. But being able to look at it and say, oh, once again, here's a refinement. Like you can see how everything has grown since those earliest days, if you've been with everything since the start like we have. And it's one of those sequences I could just watch over and over and over again because it's put together so well, up to and including when the Star Destroyer shows up at the end. Well, the Venator shows up at the end to drive to drive them away by being reinforcements. It's just a phenomenal opening to the episode. And I realized as I was watching it and as you were talking about it right now, that I would give anything, whether it's a book series, whether it's another animated series, whether it's a limited series like Tales of the Jedi or something like that. I want the story of that clone resistance from their point of view. I want a series of stories like that.
Yeah.
I want to, like, because you always have the sense that there's something big happening off screen that you're not seeing. And every time we have a hint of something like that, I'm always hopeful that we're going to get something more to come to us. And I realize in this moment how badly I want that.
Yeah. No, I can totally understand why you would. I think there's just so much about this episode that I think is done really well. I think it's, when I was talking about the way that this is setting up, the end of this season and on into the next, I was actually surprised at the hints that they give us for parts of season 3 with how you get to Tantus. I mean, the fact that we're erasing the database on this ship is a clue as to why they're doing that, because they've been given clearance to go. They've been given the codes we now know. And so I love that. I love the way that the writing of this show is so intentional to be giving us these little clues as to all the stuff that we're going to need. So in many ways, if you had watched this season and you'd watched the very beginning of season 3, you actually know exactly what they needed on how to get to Tantus. They had given you all the clues. And we've praised many times, I think, the writing of this show. And again, this is a place where you're talking about the visuals. This is another place where the writing is doing the job that it needs to do. I think it's a masterclass in compact storytelling. And making sure that all the important story points are there for you and you have everything you need. And what, again, I think the thing that is so interesting about this is the way in which we're doing this again in 25 to at most to 30-minute episodes. And that's just an incredible feat, right? To be doing that. And it really shows how these writers have latched on to everything that they were taught, specifically by George Lucas in the Clone Wars, to get us to this point where I think the storytelling here is just so complete. And it's a wonderful job. They've done such a great job.
Well, on top of that, there are two things. One, I like the fact that it immediately in this opening, with a very little moment, illustrates again why the stormtroopers are necessary to replace the clones, because the clones are having a hard time on the whole keeping other clones in line, basically. They have too much individual personality at this point. So they need a non-clone force to keep the average clone in line. I love that. And in terms of the storytelling, it's not just that it's complete storytelling, it's that it's efficient storytelling. And it does a thing that I've always loved about the original 6 Star Wars films. How long a time period passes with Crosshair at Tantus, I don't know. I know that they're rebuilding and have almost rebuilt the piers at Pabu, which we saw destroyed last episode. We know that enough time has passed that they can mention it as time having passed. Is it a week? Is it a month? Is it 6 months? It's whatever I need it to be. I can look at the story and I can say, oh, well, for this to make sense to me, it needs X, Y, and Z. And a lot of people might come at that and say, and I've encountered people who come at it and say, it's like, well, no, you need to specifically tell me these things. No, I need you to be loose with it so that you never box yourself in. And that's why I think Lucas's sort of jazz storytelling is alive here, where it's hitting the notes that I need, like Luke training on Dagobah in The Empire Strikes Back. If you're reading The Empire Strikes Back as, these passages of time are very tightly spaced together, then you could read it as like, oh, well, Luke's there for a couple of days, maybe a week. Or you could look at it and say, well, they had to fly to a NOAT without hyperdrive. Luke's there for a month. Luke's there for 3 months. Who knows how long it took, because you don't need to show me all of the boring stuff in between. You just need to show me what's important, the breadcrumbs, if you will. And that loosens it up for you to tell the stories in between those moments later if you want to. I love that part of it, and that's why I always call it out when I see it.
No, I mean, it makes sense too. Why you're so invested, especially in any film you watch, with getting to the point. And so I think that might be where some of that comes from, is you just
possibly.
Just give me the facts, ma'am. Just the facts.
Well, now hold on a second.
So
let's be very careful here, because, Godfather Part 2 isn't exactly, Coppola's great works, The Godfather Part 2, Apocalypse Now, they kind of meander a little bit, and I'm fine with that too. It's just that there's it's about the choices that you make and respecting the amount of time that you have and making a decision about what you're showing.
Sure.
And so, don't give me too much of a blanket statement on that. Okay. That's like, it might explain why I had some trouble with Andor here and there, but not everything. I also love Heat by Michael Mann, and that thing is a meandering epic. So
this is true, which is actually one of my problems with that movie. But anyway, I have to say, I love that here too, that we are introducing the character of Hemlock and really helping us kind of know how bad this person is. And, we get a sense of it when he comes in to meet Crosshair. But we also have it continued by having it told to us, he was kicked out of the Republic Science Corps because he was too unconventional. And then, of course, we see him willing to, treat Crosshair with utter contempt and do whatever it takes for him to get the information that he wants. And I love that about this episode, where we just have this completely amoral character. And he's going to do whatever it takes, to get what he wants. And I find him to be, when it comes to the pantheon of Star Wars villains, one of the creepiest, one of the scariest. And in many ways, if there is a villain in Star Wars, I think that ranks up there with the terrifying nature of anyone. I mean, the Emperor's the top, right, in Star Wars. I think
Fair.
Hemlock is right there with them because of the nature of what he's willing to do to get what he wants, and he just doesn't care about anyone.
But what makes Hemlock even creepier, in a large sense, is Palpatine has a goal. Hemlock's entire goal simply seems to be, why not? Right? Like, yes, he has projects that he's steering and he wants to, do certain things with it and everything. But like, I get the Emperor wants to live forever and he wants to control everything. Clear. Hemlock's goal seems to be simply subjugating everything. It's not even about power per se for him. It's about just the basest of motivations for him. His, like, you get what I'm getting at? Where like his motivations are even more cold than the Emperor's, because I can at least understand somebody who wants, I want to live forever. It's like, well, okay, you're going about it the wrong way, bro, but I get what you're going for there. Like Hemlock, I can't plug into anything this guy is going for that I can see. Another little note I wanted to bring up, though, and I feel foolish for not really having either caught it or anything like that before now, is coming back to this episode and getting more time with Hemlock. The hand thing, right? One of his hands is in a glove, and he keeps playing with that hand. And what it brings to mind for me now, in light of the third season of Bad Batch, is Crosshair has a problem with his hand. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't think or even necessarily want an explanation, but it's almost like we're going to see in season 3, Crosshair's going to have a physical manifestation of the guy who messes him up. So he has a hand problem too. And Hemlock, obviously, there's something about his hand that is off, and he keeps going to it, and he has it in a glove. And it's like,
right.
You talk about like foreshadowing things. I think that's an interesting little tie between those characters.
Well, and I think I love you bringing that up because it's not something that I caught, but now that I'm thinking about it, we know that Hemlock has experimented on himself because he's made himself immune to the toxin that he has, caught Crosshair with, right? So this is not a man who's above experimenting on himself. And so therefore, his hand thing could be also a result of what he's done as well, which is this inability to kind of control the motor functions of one of his hands. And so, yeah, I love that you bring that up. And I think this is the scary part. You can kind of understand somebody who wants to have ultimate power so they can control everything. But the mad scientist who just wants to do a thing to be able to do a thing is even scarier in a lot of ways. And I think that's what Hemlock is. And I love, the characterization of him. And I think the vocal performance is just outstanding.
That's perfect.
And it's one of the things that also makes him kind of scary because he has that kind of like Hannibal nature to him where everything is very calm and terrifying because it's so calm.
Yes. And when they're torturing Crosshair at the end, having that one shot showing him smiling a little bit. It's like, yeah, like that dude, that like, yeah, they're, like it gives you that goosebumps sort of thing for sure. And just, you mentioned the toxin that they use to catch Crosshair that he's made himself immune to. There are moments where we don't even really think about it too much as fans, especially fans who've been there. We've seen Star Wars 5 billion times, and it's like, it's one of those things where I keep saying to people, it's like, well, you feel the need to explain the, Luke's shot, the exhaust port, because you've seen it so many times, you forget that it's literally like an impossible shot, right? And we don't always stop to think about all of the things that the Emperor was doing while the Republic still existed to build Mount Tantus. But then also the absolute cold-blooded evil where you build a base that has the ability to knock out or kill anybody at any time. That toxin flooding the place. Why would you build that? Like, why? Like, you have to imagine throughout the entire base, they have all of this stuff where it's like, yeah, okay, we can kill anybody in that sector now. Like, imagine being the person building, not to get too Kevin Smith Clerks about it, but somebody had to build that. And nobody at any point was like, I don't know, I think that's a little excessive. I don't know if we need that.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, we're building into the layers of this, especially these characters, and we're doing it throughout the series for all of our Bad Batch characters, for all the clone characters we meet, and even of course Hemlock as a villain. We do the same thing with Emery here, even, and I think if what I love about this is that there's that moment, and especially thinking back on this now, watching season 3, I feel like there's that moment where you can already see the turn beginning to happen with her, where
yes,
she doesn't like what's happening. Like, she enjoyed being a scientist with this person and doing all these discoveries, on the Zillow Beast or whatever, right? But to do it on a clone We know these clones are being sent there for these nefarious purposes, and so I love watching that with her. I think it's a great moment, and it again, that's the beauty of us being able to go back, now with the knowledge that we have of season 3 and what's coming, and it makes me excited to be able to kind of just watch the entire series together, kind of back to back. And get that experience of how this all plays together. But, something we haven't talked anything about, which is the other side of this episode with Echo going to Pabu. And, I love, again, this connecting with Senator Chuchi, her work with the clones, that continuing. But, man, the whole part on Pabu is just so much fun. You really are seeing how these clones are taking to life there. They've become an integral part of this place. And, I just, the joy and the fun of having Omega learn to fly the Marauder, and doing the tech turn and, all that stuff is just great. I mean, and what's great about it too is, of course, we know now the next 2 episodes coming, she's really bonded with Tech.
Yeah.
And, this is going to make what comes so painful. But this, again, we've just been doing such a great job this whole series of building these relationships, and specifically with Omega and Tech, and Omega and his relationship with Fee. And so, this was great. I mean, I think this is fantastic stuff. And it's a nice juxtaposition, the horror with the way in which people are trying to fight this horror.
Well, you see what Crosshair could have had if he'd made a different decision back at the end of the first season. Think of everything he could have had. We're seeing the life he could have had. That's what's super brilliant about juxtaposing these moments this way. It also does exactly what I figured it would do when we were talking about my struggles with the Pabu episode last time, where I was like, oh, 2-parter, I know we're going to be there. It always sort of like, felt like it should have breathed more. And my specific thing being, tsunami in the second episode. Remember that discussion. Anybody who hasn't listened to the previous episode, I went on about it a little bit. But to go back to what I was talking about, the storytelling style, that tsunami happening bought a viewer like me, that was the shorthand necessary so that when we came to this episode, I know they've been there for a while. So it's the necessary means for me to feel like time has passed for Crosshair to have been transported, strapped in, have Hemlock meet him, have all of this stuff happen. It gave me that sense of time scale, and also that sense that when Hunter is asked, are you sure you haven't rethought staying? I now have built in, well, look at everything that happened at the end of the last episode. I know they've been working to restore. They must have been here for long enough for that to be a question worth asking again. It's not the next day. Time has passed. So this is where I go, okay, this is the second part of the Pabu episode, right, that I was looking for. So tip of the hat to the people who know their job so well that, the story beats work exactly the way they're supposed to.
Well, and the beauty of this too is, we saw the code that had come in from Crosshair, and that Tech thinks Crosshair's trying to warn them, and they're wondering if they can actually trust Crosshair, right? But what we know is the viewer that this is another part of the turn of that character, right? One, he's not giving up Omega or his crew to Hemlock, but two, here it's adding to that the fact that this character has definitely changed. Like there is something in him that broke, and now he has kind of realized what he should have realized a long time ago, And like you said, the really sad part of this whole thing is that we're seeing the life he could have had if he had made that other choice. And I think that was a brilliant point on your part, because it does make the story here of Crosshair incredibly sad to watch, because we know he doesn't have to be going through this. He doesn't. This didn't have to be his life. And I think the beauty of that, right, is that it really does speak to the morality tale part. You know, this is such an important thing to teach our kids. The choices that you make can have terrible consequences, right? And so I really appreciate that this is one of those places where we can see that playing out.
I agree. I mean, it's such grand storytelling, and it's such important storytelling, because it's constructing all of this with the backdrop of things we've seen come before, things we know are coming. And again, much like other things that we've gotten, like it gives added weight to what we see, what we've grown up with, basically. I talk about having watched Star Wars 5 billion times. Anything like this, even going back to like Rogue One, or actually I'll throw this out there, going back to Rebels and the way they used Vader in Rebels made Vader terrifying again. So that when I went in to Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi again, I wasn't just thinking about, hey, Anakin Skywalker, he was an innocent little kid who made some bad choices and he got manipulated and he thought this and he thought that. Now I'm able to recontextualize and say, no, the Empire is really even worse than I thought it was. Mm-hmm. Don't forget that there's nothing cute about cheering for the bad guy. These are bad people doing terrible things. They're not anti-heroes. The anti-heroes are the Bad Batch, right? Like, but they're becoming real heroes through this whole thing. You can't sit there and giggle about the Emperor or anything like that, because that guy, he's signing Hemlock's checks, and he's signing Tarkin's checks, and he's and we know Krennic's out there too. Like, these are, look at what they're doing to Crosshair, and again, to go back to Crosshair, how beautiful that in this season they take Crosshair from, boo, you betrayed the batch, you're a terrible person, to, I feel so terrible for him because he's suffering the consequences of his choices. Everybody wants people to suffer the consequences of their choices, but what does that really mean? Do I think Crosshair deserves this? Well, no, he's seen the error of his ways, right? But even if he hadn't seen the error of his ways, did he deserve this? Does anybody? Like, those are important questions to ask.
The beauty of this and is, something that we've said over and over again, which is the way in which the Star Wars animation is truly doing its job when it comes to Star Wars storytelling. You can add to a universe by just giving it the veneer of the thing, or you can truly understand that universe, and so that when you add something to it, it has real resonance. And, what we've seen in the Clone Wars, we've seen in the Bad Batch, we've seen in Tales of the Jedi. These are things to which truly understand the universe of the storytelling that they're in. And so when they're adding stories to that storytelling, it feels incredibly rich and well done, and it creates in us this sense of seeing something incredibly special. And so I love it. I just love the work that they're doing here, and this is another phenomenal episode in this season. And I can't wait to honestly wrap it up next week with you as we talk about the 2-part finale. Because, man, it is just fantastic.
Oh, I can't wait. myself. I still remember the first time watching the finale and just feeling like, spoilers, feeling like my heart got ripped out.
Yes.
As I went, no, don't do this. Yeah.
Oh man.
And
are we ready? Are we ready for that, John?
I might have a little something to drink while I'm watching there. Master Rushing.
It's a good call. It's a good call.
Might have to take the edge off in a couple of scenes, but we will get to meet up with somebody who is an anti-hero, I guess you could say, that comes back into our lives every so often, especially in animation. So let's looking forward to that. And in the meantime, speaking of something that is rich and well-developed and truly entertaining, where can people find you online?
Well, you can find me all over the place on social media under the name MattRushing02. You can also find me here on the network with a show I did with Drea Kaufman. We talked about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series. It's called Owl Post. You can also find me on the TFM network with a bunch of shows. One is the 602 Club, which is a general geek show where we talk about all of those franchises we love. John is a frequent guest over there, so please hit that up. And then you can find me with a bunch of Star Trek talk with The Orb, Warp 5, The Artificial Tango, Saddle Up, and sometimes on Literary Treks. But John, if people wanted to catch up and see what you've got going on these days, where would they find you?
Oh, I don't have much going on, but if you want to check out, you can find me as Kessel Junkie out there on your social network of choice. Like Matt said, I love going over and shaking things up over on the 602 Club. It's one of my favorite pastimes. And you can also hear me right here on the network co-hosting a show called House Lights, where we look at the work of directors, and we have a time. And as of the recording of this show, I invite everybody to listen to me talk back and forth with a couple of Trekkies about how they felt about Stuart Baird's Star Trek Nemesis, which is always a fun discussion, and Insurrection is still worse. But in the meantime, Master Rushing, I think it's time for me to go and pop in that DVD with a young Bane playing opposite Captain Picard. And so I think it's time to close these negotiations.
John, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.